Well, welcome everyone to the third session of the educational component of the community of practice for the UN high-level climate champion Race to Resilience initiative to organize transformational resilience coordinating networks around the world. Again, as before, I want to say great thanks to our co-sponsors. And our partners, the co-sponsors being, the partners being the Race to Resilience Initiative, Campaign for Trauma-Informed Policy and Practice, and Trauma-Informed Oregon, and you see all of our co-sponsors down below. Just to remind you all again of our key message, that is that community is medicine. And I think as things happening around the US especially, and how we are affecting other countries, this is even more important today, that it's through human history, it's been our ability to cooperate, come together and band together that's always been key to surviving, adapting, and remaining healthy and resilient during crisis and solving complex problems. And this is what we can do again if we form these TRCNs, the Transformational Resilience Coordinating Networks. Just a brief summary of what we talked about last week. After a Transformational Resilience Coordinating Network has formed a steering committee or an advisory committee, whatever you want to call it, to oversee the operations, it should begin to build community capacity to transform the community from a trauma organized to a wellness and resilience enhancing entity. And there's a number of ways to do that. Building social connections is by far the most important protective factors that TRCN should focus on, because it is essential to deal with relentless stresses, disasters, and other kinds of adversities. And the bonds builds the bonds needed for social change. And there's a variety of ways that TRCNs can build social connections. And one of the most important, as the climate emergency gets worse and worse, will be to organize mutual aid networks. And I think that there's a very good chance that the next skills training open session is going to focus on organizing mutual aid networks. Today's focus is on the second foundational protective factor. I'm listing them linearly. It's not really linear. They interact, but the second foundational protective factor is that is to make a just transition by engaging residents and enhancing local physical, built, economic, and ecological justice in a just and equitable way. And the third foundational protective factor, build universal literacy about mental wellness and resilience by helping everyone become trauma and resilience informed. And again, they are interactive. So just a very brief summary again of what we've been doing. The first session, we talked about how to organize TRCN and why that's important. Then we talked about building community capacity by either offering some trauma healing events or doing asset mapping. Now we're talking about using the information that comes out of that to develop a TRCN's vision of success, goals, and strategies. And those strategies should include you can include more than this, but the 5 foundational protective factors, again, the most important: build social connections across boundaries. Today, we're going to talk about create supportive physical, economic, and ecological conditions, and develop universal mental wellness and resilience literacy. And next week, the last week, we'll talk about the last 2 protective factors and a brief overview of the last steps. So as we've done in the past, let's start with a short resilience pause. Again, this is something you can use in your own life, but you can help people in your community, in your neighborhood, learn these skills as well to calm their body, mind, and emotion when they're distressed. So this is called the control test, and it's a very, very powerful way for self-care. And really what it's about is, before worrying about or taking actions on something, always try to run it through a basic test to determine what you can and what you cannot control, and then try to focus on what you can control. When you really think about it, the only things you actually can control are your character, how you see the world, how you lead your life, your beliefs, your assumptions about things, your actions and reactions to things, and how you treat others. Things we can control, for example, are our opinions, our pursuits, the desires, our aversions, whether we worry, our behaviors, our reactions to things. Things we cannot control are what others say about us, what others do, the value of our property, the value of our money, et cetera, et cetera. We really can't control that. So let's practice the control test. Identify something you're worrying about right now or are very anxious about. Could be something that's family related, work related, could be the climate emergency, could be political. Just try to identify something you're anxious or worrying about. Just take a brief second to do that. And now ask yourself if this is something within your control related to your character, who you are. Is it within your control related to your actions or reactions to the world, or how you treat others? Or if it is not related to one of those factors and thus not within your control. Just think about that. Is what you're worrying about within your control, or is it not? And if the answer is yes, it is within your control, you should and can take action to address it. Talk about that in a second. But if the answer is no, it is not within your control, you don't want to try to harm yourself with the second arrow. This term comes out of Buddhism, which means that there's all sorts of adversities in life. Life is filled with suffering in many ways. We lose people, we lose jobs, etc. That's just the way life is. But then we often hit ourselves, that's the arrows that hit us. We often hit ourselves with a second arrow, which is self-inflicted. We affect ourselves even more. We get down about it, we get depressed, or we reach out and we harm somebody else, our spouse, our kids, or the natural environment. That's the second arrow. And it's nothing to do really with the first arrow that just happens in life. So after you think about that, if it is within your control, you can take action. I'll talk about that in a second. But if it's not within your control, try not to harm yourself with your second arrow. And actually, are you doing that? Are you actually harming yourself, not by what's actually happening around you, but by something you're doing? And if you're doing that, maybe just use the skylight method we talked about last session to observe what you experience as you think about, is it in your control or not within your control? The skylight method again means imagine you're sitting in a room and you're looking also through the roof, in a skylight in a roof, down at yourself, observing yourself sort of objectively. What's going on within that person, in their body, their mind, their emotions? Just take a second to notice yourself using the skylight method or any other method you want. As you think about, is what you're worrying or anxious about within your control, or is it not? And are you harming yourself with a second arrow consequently? So how does this relate to the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis? The control test can empower you to be a person of action. You can get educated, you can build alliances, you can really train hard, continually press for social, economic, and political changes, because by focusing on what you can control yourself, you can put your energy into where you can create the most meaningful change and avoid the second arrow while you're doing that and maintain your personal wellness and resilience. In short, the control test makes decision-making and emotional investment much easier to manage. It allows us not to stress out about things we can't control. And that can be very liberating, especially when it comes to the climate emergency and some of the other adversities going on today. So use this, just keep thinking about it. Can I control this? Is this something I can do? Or can't control it, but I'm actually affecting myself, harming myself with a second arrow? Just something to think about in life, and think about how you could share this message with others also. So with that, let's talk about the second foundational protective factors. And so we talked about last week, the social connections must be a real priority, but you should be building social connections when you engage residents in the second foundational protective factor, that is making a just transition by engaging residents in enhancing local physical, built, economic, and ecological conditions. And it's based on three realities, and it's very much needed for the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis. One is that both the impacts of and actions to slash emissions, regenerate nature, and adapt to the climate impacts can create social, economic, and ecological harm. So both trying to minimize the crisis and adapting and preparing for it can both create social, economic, and ecological harm. And without explicit, sustained preventative actions, those changes will unjustly impact BIPOC, low-income, and other marginalized residents, Black, Indigenous, people of color, that's what BIPOC stands for, and often unduly benefit wealthier populations who contributed the most to the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis. So we all have an ethical and moral responsibility to ensure an equitable distribution of both the downsides of actions and the benefits of actions and policies to address the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis. A just transition means leave no one behind, and it should include three elements. First, active participation of affected communities in planning, implementing, and evaluating mitigation, adaptation, and other forms of transformational solutions. That means not just letting government agencies do it or a nonprofit. You actually engage the residents in the communities. But also it involves actively anticipating the negative impacts that might affect low-income populations, BIPOC populations, et cetera, through assessments that foresee and then try to proactively prevent harm. That often requires working through scientists to do some projections, but doing your best to sort of figure out what's coming. We won't know all those impacts. And three, the third key element is really providing ongoing support through financial aid, capacity building efforts, et cetera, to enhance the capabilities of vulnerable and marginalized populations to actively participate in ensuring a just transition. So there's many different areas where a just transition is needed, but three of the most important that I'll focus on today are the physical built conditions, economic and ecological conditions. And physical built means transportation systems, housing, public spaces, energy and climate adaptation. There's more, but that's what I'm going to focus on. Economic conditions means creating local business operations that provide living wage jobs, that are trying to transition to a cradle-to-cradle economic system that's ecologically sound, and again, energy and climate adaptation. And ecological conditions mean air, water, and soil toxins and pollutions, trying to address those, trying to enhance and regenerate waterways, lakes, wetlands, et cetera, forests, grasslands, and all forms of biodiversity. So why should we focus on the local physical built conditions? So transportation infrastructure affects mental health in many ways. For example, it creates separation, increases costs, limited physical movement, and produces high stress during commutes if it's not done in an equitable and just ways. Transit pollution also, pollution from it also is concentrated often in BIPOC and low-income communities, creating mental health problems. Housing and mental health are very closely connected. People don't realize that. Dilapidated or toxic housing is directly linked, has been directly linked in research to psychological distress and poor child and adult development. And even parks and public spaces that fail to provide healthy spaces and to meet the needs of people to recreate outside and connect with nature also have been found to create mental health problems. And efforts to slash local greenhouse gas emissions and adapt the physical built environment to address and prevent harm from the climate impacts can also increase inequality, as well as mental health and psychosocial impacts and problems. So we really have to watch that. And why should we focus on local economic conditions? Because automation, high-tech stuff, offshoring overseas, corporate Wall Street market power, and other factors have eliminated millions of living wage jobs and reduced wages for millions of others, people who do have jobs, especially BIPOC residents, blue-collar workers, and those, and many others without college degree. President Trump's claiming he's trying to bring back those jobs. I think there's lots of questions about that, or if that's his real goal, but that speaks to this issue at least. Also, people who lack living wage jobs and the long-term unemployed have 3 times greater chance of feeling low self-esteem and feeling hopeless. That can lead to severe anxiety, depression, and many other mental health issues. Poor mental health can also activate a vicious cycle of reduced employability. People don't want people who have these problems working for them, and therefore the inability to get a job and retain a job, which produces, of course, even more psychological and emotional problems, becomes a vicious cycle. And all of these factors are major contributors to rising alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and suicides among people with low wages or no wage jobs or no jobs at all. And especially when you add in people without a college degree, it's called deaths of despair. There's books on it. A lot of this is happening in rural communities, and they are fighting back about that. They're very angry, but the way that's happening often is not actually solving their problem. And why focus on local ecological conditions? And I think we all know this: polluted and degraded forests, waterways, and other ecosystems, the lack of green spaces, the loss of biodiversity creates mental health problems. For example, certain air pollutants have been linked to depression, anxiety, and suicides. Research found that people living more than 2/3 of a mile from green spaces have a 50% greater chance of severe stress than people living with no green spaces in an urban area, for example, a high-rise urban area, have almost a 50%, 44% higher rates of anxiety compared to people who have green space near them. BIPOC and low-income residents often suffer the most from these issues. Just a new research report just came out last week that found that the 2020 California wildfires, the smoke that people were associated with a really high jump in mental health related emergency room visits, especially for young children, minority groups, and single women. This is mental health emergency room visits. And without great care, efforts to shift to a clean, renewable energy and prepare and adapt to the climate impacts will also increase unjust and inequitable practices. So why should a transformation resilience coordinating network engage residents in making a transition in these areas? Because doing so can build those social connections that are vital, help residents understand the effects of traumatic stress, involve residents in pro-social activities, trying to engage them. It can protect residents from the impacts of the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis, and therefore increase their sense of safety and security, which is vital for mental health, psychosocial well-being, as well as physical health. Consequently, doing so will enhance their physical health, and engaging residents in these kind of activities can reduce local emissions, regenerate local ecosystems of biodiversity, and thus engage residents in doing their part to minimize the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis. And one thing that's really we see everywhere when doing this is even seeing small signs of progress creates hope for the future, which reduces mental health problems. The Neighborhood Resilience Project in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is doing this, and that's their focus on helping people find healthy hope by seeing progress in these activities. And Father Paul Abernathy, who runs it, just will tell you on and on that when people engage in these and they see progress, it increases hope and reduces stresses and emotional, psychological, and social issues. Here's just a few examples. I'm not going to go through them. I just wanted to see them. But when you get online, when you get the slides, you can go through them. about a few examples of communities doing this. Inclusive community selection for engagement in clean transportation initiatives. There's engaging the community in local housing strategies, in community businesses, as they call them, community engagement for restoration of local ecosystems. Lots of ways that a TRCN can do this work. And every TRCN activity should actually focus on a just transition. It should be a standalone focus, but it also should be integrated into every other focus. That is to say, building social connections should also deal with a just transition. And all the other ones that we talk about should do that also. So imagine the benefits of engaging residents in your community in making a just transition, where all residents become aware of unsafe, unhealthy, and unjust and inequitable physical, built, economic, and ecological conditions, and how that can undermine and affect their mental and physical health, and how engaging them in building safe and healthy, low emission or zero emission climate resilient conditions is essential to sustain their health and resilience during the long climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis that we're now experiencing. And just imagine helping all residents become actively engaged in designing systems, giving feedback to people, et cetera, that enhance everyone's health and wellness by working with public agencies, nonprofits, the private sector to enhance these conditions, not just allowing them to have your opinion about it, but actually be involved with this kind of work. And that's what we see in many, many places it can work. And building social connections and making a just transition should be accomplished by also engaging everyone in the third foundational protective factor, and that is to develop universal literacy about mental wellness and transformation resilience. And this means you help everyone become what you could call trauma and resilience informed. The old framework was trauma informed, and that's important, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it's also resilience informed. Both are really important. Universal literacy about mental wellness and transformation resilience really flows from and follows from health literacy, which is common, a phrase that's used around the World Health Organization and others focuses on health literacy, which is the degree to which people have the capacity to obtain, process, and understand basic health information needed to make appropriate health decisions. That's what a TRCN should be doing. But health literacy campaigns, which are now common in many countries, often shortchange the mental health and psychosocial aspects of health. And this shows even that many health providers fail to understand the old saying, there's no physical health without mental health. They're so focused on their specific expertise in a physical health, they don't understand how psychological, social, and emotional conditions affect physical health and how physical health circles back and affects mental health. And research also shows that mental health and resiliency literacy is very low in the United States, in the EU, and in most other nations. People just don't understand it and often don't want to talk about it. It somehow seems like if you talk about mental health, you can be stigmatized. It's just not something people like to talk about. So health literacy, mental wellness, and resilience literacy is very low. But it's really going to be important as the climate emergency gets worse. And it should be built around the knowledge that humans are pushed by psychobiological drives. We talked about that in the last couple of courses that create these fight, flight, freeze, fawn reactions. But we're also pulled by wanting meaning and purpose in our lives. This is a quote by Viktor Frankl, who you might have read some of his work on. We're pushed by drives, but we're pulled by a desire for meaning and purpose in life. So we have to deal with both of those issues when we talk about mental wellness and resilience literacy. And understanding the transformation resilience cycle, as I call it, will help understand what you should be doing, what a TRCN should be doing to help build that kind of literacy. So over on the left, it starts off with an event or a series of events damages or destroys things we value. It might be beliefs, it might be our property, our residence, it might be valuables, it might be a relationship. And the trauma shatters deeply held and often unrecognized assumptions and beliefs about the way the world works, about who other people are and how we should think and act in the world, that the world is a relatively safe place, for example. Now we realize, well, it's not. Or people are generally good, and then something happens from people doing bad things to us and we go, well, wait a second, they're not, etc. When that kind of thing happens, this is sort of the classic definition of trauma, psychological trauma. But when that happens, we enter a period of disarray. That's the next slide over. And disarray occurs when our crisis affects our thinking and emotions and behaviors, etc. And we immediately try to go back to pre-crisis thinking and practices. We don't want to change anything. That's natural. We all do that. We just try to push back. We either deny what's happening or we just sort of try to get beyond it really quickly. And when that fails, when we cannot go back to the way we thought about the world, saw the world, saw ourselves, we then enter a real period of disarray. We don't know. We're in chaos about how to think and how to act. And it's only when we realize we cannot return to the past do we make the choice to open ourselves up to new ways and new acting in the world. This opens the door to the transformational phase. And the transformational phase involves beginning to see reality more clearly. Oh, my way of looking at the world wasn't really accurate. I didn't see all these things. It opens the way to new pathways of how to act. So we begin to make the choice to explore and innovate, adopt new thinking and practices, try this out, and often produces better outcomes for us. That's substantially healthier and more beneficial outcomes. Some of them outcomes might be greater awareness of strengths we never thought we had and skills, greater emotional stability, deeper appreciation for life, better relationships with other people, and we drop some we don't like, etc. That's the transformational resilience cycle. This is really what about personal growth is about for many people using crisis in that way. And that's what really you want to help people learn about through building universal literacy. And building universal literacy, therefore, it sort of involves three core elements. The first one is help everyone become trauma informed, meaning understand how trauma and toxic stress can affect their mind, body, emotion, and behaviors and shatter their deeply held beliefs and assumptions about the world. But also, then moving to the right, you want to help people learn presencing skills or self-regulation skills to calm the body, mind, and emotion behaviors when distressed, but also purposing skills. Those are adversity-based growth skills to find meaning and purpose in life. So the first step, or what you don't have to do these in sequence, but you can do it any way you want, is help everyone become trauma informed. Use age and culturally appropriate methods to help everyone understand the push of their built-in fight, flight, freeze, fawn biopsychological drives. This means helping people learn how stresses can affect their body, mind, emotions, and therefore their behaviors, but also how stress affects the thinking and actions of groups. Here's one example. I think I showed this last session, or maybe during the first session, that I showed a picture of the person in the middle that shows where somebody's holding stress. Put yourself in that position. Where do you hold your stress? And then you go to the left and say, well, that's really what's happening. The stress is a physical reaction and a mental reaction, et cetera. That's just one way to help people become trauma informed. You can use much simpler ways, especially for youth and others, to help them understand. Just ask them, has anybody got a headache? Anybody got a neck ache? You know what's going on? Here's what's happening. There's lots of different ways to help people understand it. Then help everyone learn presencing resilience skills, self-regulation and co-regulation, again, to calm their body, mind, and emotions when distressed. And here are some examples. There's personal skills, breath-based skills, awareness-based skills, culturally based skills, cognitive skills. The control test is one of those. but there's many others. We're going to go through a couple more here. Spiritually based skills, very important, and physical skills, exercise, being outdoors, etc. But another helpful presencing skills is what I call circles of support. And we've done this a little bit already, but I want to just point this out that you can use this skill to help people identify the skills and resources and social supports they have to remain healthy and resilient during adversities. So you have people draw a circle and put their name in it, and they say, what are your personal skills to deal with adversities? And you have some examples, the ability to use healthy methods to stay calm, like getting exercise, eating good, being assertive, reaching out to others. And then you have them write their internal supports. And over here, you can see that might be an image of an experience they had, or a role model, or a place they have that brings peace of mind. I always say that about an hour and a half away from where I live is a place called the Metolius River. And I just bring to mind sitting next to the Metolius River, it flows by, it just calms my whole body. It's an internal support. And then have people list their social supports, friends and families who provide unconditional emotional support and or practical assistance to them. And then their external supports, physical places like a room in your house, or a garden, or a place in town, or an emergency kit you have that give you peace of mind. And then finally, you can ask people to list their ecological supports. Does your resident have a garden, a yard, house plants? Does your community have green spaces, trees, wildlife, etc.? And how aware people are they? How much do they use these? This is a tool that you can use. I've used these many, many times with groups, youth and adults, and it can be very helpful. People go through this, they realize, oh, I don't have much social support. I don't have much of this. Oh, I really have this. And they start to realize how they can focus more effort. And still another helpful cognitive presencing skill is the ABC model of observing your thoughts and emotions. Again, you have to teach this in an age and culturally appropriate way. But what it means is we all usually can see an activating event, and we sort of observe and know the consequences. So we saw a traffic accident, and boy, did we get stressed out because of it. And we often see those sort of clearly. What we don't see, what we're not aware of, is our beliefs and self-talk that happened that created those reactions. That's again, it's within us, so we're actually often adding that second arrow to ourselves. And there's 10 common thinking disorders that you can think about. Am I fixated on flaws? Am I dismissing the positive? Am I assuming something that isn't really happening? Am I labeling something good, bad, whatever? Am I overgeneralizing? Is it all or nothing thinking? Am I catastrophizing? Am I using shoulds and oughts, et cetera? Am I personalizing, et cetera? So you just sort of identify, is that what's happening between the action and my reaction? And it helps you think that through. But when you do that, when you help people do that, and we do this all the time in workshops, you can do this in simple ways through more workshop-oriented kind of focuses. When do that, it's really important to help everybody realize that compassion, self-compassion is key. You want to help everybody normalize their reaction to using thinking disorder, because people will start to beat themselves up. We all do that. Oh my God, I was catastrophizing again. Why do I always do that? There's something wrong with me. Help people realize there is nothing wrong with them. You're just reacting to those psychobiological drives, and you just become aware of that and realize, am I throwing a second arrow at myself? Is that really the case? And you help them to try to see better. And then one thing you can do to help yourself and help others is develop your own presencing safety plan. When we run workshops out in community groups, we do this all the time. Many times we get feedback saying this is really very helpful. So on the left side, you have people write down what they're going to watch for when they're distressed or dysregulated. I have rapid breathing. My heart starts to beat fast. I get a headache, or my mind starts racing. Just list what they normally think happens. And then on the right side, what am I going to do when I see these? I'm going to practice this kind of presencing skill or that, mindfulness of breath, circles of support, ABC model of this thinking disorder, whatever. And they can put that on a little note card, put it in your wallet, put it on your desk, put it on your mirror in your bathroom. Very, very helpful. But presencing is essential, but insufficient. Especially when it comes to the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis and many other adversities, because it doesn't mean we will live with a principled, vital, and meaningful life during adversities. We might calm ourselves, but how do we live a meaningful, purposeful life in the middle of that? That's what we also have to focus on, especially with the long climate emergency. And that's important because remember that we're not only pushed by psychobiological drives, we are also pulled by the need for meaning and purpose in our life. So purposing goals is to intensify the pull of purpose. And it's about helping people find constructive meaning, direction, and hope in life by learning from adversities and making value-based choices that enhance personal, social, economic, and ecological well-being. Psychiatrist Carl Jung said that, I remember this quote from many years ago, meaning makes a great many things endurable, perhaps everything. And this is really important. So here's just some ways you can do that. First, sort of help people start to learn how to honestly appraise what's going on around them. So if you would, again, just describe a distressing event you recently had and how you reacted to it. So how did it affect your body, your mind, your behaviors, your emotions? Just think about that. And afterwards, after the community practice is over, I would encourage you to dive more deeply into all of these and practice them yourself. So one thing is just to describe how it affected you, but then take a moment and describe how it likely affected people who were involved with this incident, if they were, or who even saw it or observed it from afar. What was their reaction to it, do you think? And then describe how your reaction might have even affected the natural environment. Did you get distressed and go out and shop more, or go eat fast food, or do something like that in some ways that might have affected the natural environment? And if others were involved or observed, not people directly involved, but just sort of watched it, how would they have described the situation? And when you answer those questions, can you start to sort of see the situation a little differently then? Might that be possible? And then you can ask, what can I learn from this situation? Aristotle once said, learning is an ornament in prosperity, a refuge in adversity, and a provision in old age. So thinking about adversity in different ways, reframing it, can help you find meaning in it rather than simply reacting to it. So ask, what can I learn from this situation? It's a very powerful way to reframe our thinking about a distressing event. Are there any lessons you can now learn from the experience you just described or thought about when I asked you to do that? What's going on there? And another possible way is to then have people clarify the values they want to live by in the middle of adversities. And one way to do this is create a vision of your best possible self. I often use the miracle question. You ask people just to imagine you go to sleep tonight, something magical happens, you are suddenly able to think and respond to distressing events in the ideal way you would like, in ways that helps you avoid harming others, harming yourself, or the natural environment. It allows you to live with dignity and pride. And when you wake up in the morning, you find yourself in the very same difficult situation you described before. How would you respond differently now in the ideal? And can you see a way to make that happen the next time you experience something like that? And still another way to clarify how you want to live in the middle of adversities and find meaning and value and purpose in it is to just go through and identify your top 3 values about how you want to be the person you want to be and live with dignity and purpose in the midst of adversity. We do this all the time in workshops. And people usually we ask them to circle the values that are the most important to you. Usually come up with 10. They say, no, okay, limit it now. And then, okay, I got 5. No, what are the top 3? And it really forces people to think about that. And then ask, did you live out those values in this distressing event that you had? And can you do that? And spirituality is another very important guiding value for many people. They find meaning, strength, and purpose in adversity by tapping into their spiritual beliefs. So if appropriate, you might want to ask people if they lived in accordance with their spiritual values in the midst of adversities. And the transformation resilience cycle and purposing requires helping people overcome hopelessness, especially related to the climate and ecosystem biodiversity crisis. This is a very powerful emotion that can really adversely affect the way people perceive ourselves, others, the current condition in the world, and it can lead people to harm themselves, others, and the natural environment. Nothing matters anymore. What's the difference what I do? And what's happening here? So one way to help people deal with that is to focus on helping them harvest hope, to overcome despair and hopelessness by realizing that how you respond is up to you. And research found that hope emerges most readily when 3 closely related factors are present. People have a vision of a place they want to arrive at or a condition they want to achieve, a sense of the initial steps they can take and an overall approach to get there, and a commitment to move towards that vision even when obstacles arrive. So if you would, just identify a time when you did something helpful for somebody else or nature without any obligation or expected payoff. Just very quickly, did you were at a grocery store or a store, somebody dropped something on the ground, you just picked it up and gave it back to them without being asked. You opened the door for an elderly person coming into a place just because you wanted to do that. Just something real simple. You bring one to mind and then think about, how did you feel afterwards? When we do good things for others or help the world be a better place, engage in pro-social activities, that is, we enhance our self-esteem. And what's happening is you're activating what's called the oxytocin virtuous cycle. Selfless pro-social actions feel good, which triggers a release of oxytocin into our bloodstream, which generates more compassion, which drives more selfless behaviors, which inspires more trust, which causes the greater release of oxytocin and produces a virtuous cycle. So engaging in pro-social actions is not just about being nice or moralism. It's also an expanded notion of self-interest. Helping others in the environment will each also benefit each of us and give us hope for the future. So taking that information, learning about the world, trying to get a better picture of it, clarifying the values we want to live by, finding hope, finding ways to find hope in adversity by engaging in pro-social activities really helps people find purpose in the midst of adversity. And then you can help people develop their own purposing action plan. So up at the top, they write, what are my strengths, my interests, the passions, what are the core values I want to live by? What am I going to do to enhance my own personal well-being, actions I can take to help the well-being of others and thus help myself? And they can go through and write up the immediate actions I'm going to take, some of the barriers I'll face, how I'm going to overcome those barriers, what are the likely benefits, and even when am I going to do this? You put the date in. And then there's midterm actions also. This is also, we do this, and again, you can have people write this down and end up in a note card they put in their wallet, in the mirror at home, on their desk at work, whatever. Very powerful tool, something to think about, and adapt something like this to youth. It works well. So imagine the benefits of your transformational resilience coordinating network, assisting everyone to engage in age and culturally appropriate way, understand the basics of the transformational resilience cycle, become trauma informed and use their own presencing skills to calm their body, minds, and emotions and behaviors and help others do so as well. And also learn purposing skills to help them use adversities as transformational catalysts to find new meaning, direction, and hope in life that increases not only their own well-being, but the well-being of others and the natural environment. So just imagine doing that. You're helping everyone make a just transition, and you're also helping people find meaning, purpose, and hope in life. And this focus, becoming literate about mental wellness and transformation for this, should also be incorporated in all of the other protective factors. So we're going to take a breakout room now, and we'll do this for 8 minutes. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jesse. But when you do that, and Christian's posting these in chat, share what you've gained after introducing yourself briefly. Share what you've gained from today's sessions, and then discuss how you might be able to implement something similar in your neighborhood and community. And post any questions or key issues that come up, as well as questions in chat, and we'll have a brief time to talk about those afterwards. So we'll see you all in 8 minutes. Jesse, it's all yours.
Thanks, Bob. Opening up the breakout rooms now. If anybody's in a room that for some reason they are by themselves, feel free to come to the main breakout room and we can always move you around. Just wanted to say that. Don't expect that to happen. But if so, we're here. Either way, we will see you in about 8 minutes. Looking forward to it.
Welcome back, everyone. If you have key issues that came up, key points, questions, can you post them in chat? And Christian will read some, and we'll just have a few minutes of question and answer and talk about that. So Christian, let me know when something comes up. One of the things that always comes up, or often comes up, and I don't know if it did in your session, is how do you have these kind of engagements in a politically polarized situation? And it came up again, even with some questions that came in last week. And, think about it. Is there anybody that you know in your life that you have a different political view from, that you relate to? Almost all of us do. We have somebody or some people. They're not necessarily best friends, but they have a relationship. And what do you do? Well, you talk about daily events going on and other sorts of things. That's how you address these issues. You really just deal with practical issues that people are concerned about in their community. Don't challenge them. Don't tell them they're bad, etc. And that often is a way to do that. Just an example. I'm not going to put this person on the spot, but I have a friend who's the husband of a very long friend of ours and my wife's, and when COVID happened, he had just retired, COVID happened, and he started to watch stuff online about vaccines and became an anti-COVID vaccine person. And it turned off we have a group of friends, about 12 or 14, that we've been friends with for a long, long time. And it turned off everybody, didn't want to talk to him. But eventually we started to just invite him over, and we talk, and we never talked about the COVID stuff. He brought it up once, and I remember one person, I won't mention the name, said, "We don't want to talk about that." And then we went on to talk about other things. And he's sort of now part of the group again. And we deal with practical issues. So there are ways to deal with that. Sort of just set aside the political and deal with practical conversations. And that can help as one way to do that. Christian, anything popping in?
I'm seeing a lot of folks express appreciation for each other and the time they spend in the group. That's awesome. I'll go ahead and add the CTIP TRCN groups link in there as well, and a great opportunity to continue the conversation outside of these sessions. Otherwise, presencing and purposing resonated with folks, and they're going to think about ways to incorporate it as they teach the community resilience model. So that's fantastic to see. Another group really appreciated the skills focused session. So these skills look like they're resonating with folks today. That's great. I think they're super important given everything going on in our world. So thank you all.
Right. Great. Yeah, the community resilience models are wonderful. That's the Trauma Resource Institute. If you don't know about that, Elaine Miller-Karras was actually one of the co-founders of the ITRC with me now, I guess 12 years ago, 13 years ago. So a great set of skills. All right, let me just do a brief summary of today's session. That building social connections and the mutual aid networks and communities is the most important protective factor Again, I want to reemphasize that the TRCNs need to focus on when they use a public health strategy to build population level mental wellness awareness, but building social connection should be a major focus of the second foundational protective factor, and that is making a just transition by engaging residents and enhancing the safe, healthy, and just zero-emission, climate-resilient, physical-built, economic, and ecological conditions. So when you do that, make sure you're also building social connections, bringing people together, helping them get to know each other, et cetera. And when you're doing both of those, build universal literacy, help people understand mental wellness and transformational resilience. It should be a core focus of those other two. So they're all integrated together. Remember, next Tuesday's last community practice educational session, and it'll focus on the last two foundational protective factors. TRCN should actually engage residents in activities that are known research-wise to sustain mental wellness during adversities. And also at the same time, we got to set up ongoing opportunities for residents to heal traumas that they do experience. And we'll talk about both of those. And next, not this Thursday, but the Thursday after that will be the second skills training open session, Thursday the 24th. And we'll focus on skills chosen by you, likely mutual aid, how to form mutual aid networks, et cetera. But we'd love your feedback so we know more about what you want to focus on. There's the form. You can't hit it online here, but Christian's posted it, so you should be able to get it there. So with that, I'd like you to just remember the key message: community is medicine. And with that, we will see you next week. Have a good week, everybody. Take care.